Hi everyone, this is the last of my videos for the day of publication day for Lies You Didn't Tell. I've been really excited for all of my chats, and I'm going to chat with Tania Scott, who writes as T.E. Scott. She writes the Wronged Women's Co-operative cozy. Would you say they're cozy mysteries, Tania?
Yeah, I sort of describe them as cozy-ish. Yeah.
Cozy-ish. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with Tania. We both live in Scotland, so we'll have some Scottish crime Tartan Noir chat. But Tania, do you want to do a full introduction of your books so that people know what you write and where you are in your series?
Yeah, so I've been self-publishing for quite a while. I've written science fiction and fantasy, and I did some 1920s crime. But over the last year or so, I've been writing these kind of contemporary cozies, sort of in the style of the Richard Osman, those kind of things. So they're cozies, but they're not super twee, they're not super cutesy. And yeah, I've been writing them. I've got 5 out now, and there will be a 6th in the end of October,
Right.
which is not written yet, but hopefully will appear at the end of October as if by magic.
So one of the things I really admire about you is how quickly you write. And I think I've said this to you in the past, because I'm also self-published, but I find it hard to keep up such that sort of writing schedule that I would like. But you seem to have just so much discipline to getting your writing done and getting the words in. How do you manage that?
It is tough, and it certainly wasn't something that happened overnight. My first book, the crime book, the paranormal investigations of Mr. Charles Fort, I had really long titles at the start for some reason. Don't know why. But that took me like 3 years to write. The quicker you get. Also, writing books in a series helps because you know the characters, and they are cozies. They're not the most complex things you'll ever write. You know, when I was doing my 1920s ones, I had to do a lot more research. These books are basically set where I live. The town's a fictional version of where I live. So there's not much research. It's all just like stuff that happens, basically. If anything funny happens in my life, it goes in the book. So, and yeah, I think I'm naturally quite a quick writer anyway. Before I wrote fiction, I wrote a PhD, and that I think gave me the confidence to know that I could write quite quickly and write decent amounts. So yeah, I am quick, but it didn't happen at first, and it did take a while to build up to that. And I don't have another job, which obviously helps massively. So when the kids are at school, that's my writing time. Yeah.
So was the fact that you have kids at school and that time, did that sort of give you some inspiration for your main character?
Yeah, definitely. And it was funny when I was looking at your books as well, you've got the kind of single mom character. I'm not a single mom, thankfully. I don't know if I'd cope. But yeah, it definitely was my inspiration for these books, particularly coming out of COVID. I don't know if we really want to talk about those sad times, but
Yeah.
lockdowns and things were just so difficult, being at home with 3 small children. And that's kind of where the books came, because I felt like mums in particular had been kind of ignored and forgotten about. So I wanted to write these books where mums take center stage, and that's what's happened in these books. Yeah.
And they definitely do. I think you have quite an eclectic mix of mums as well. So I think that there's a mum for everyone, if you like. So when you read your books, there's going to be someone there that you relate to. It isn't just all like not, although they're part of like a cooperative, it's not like it's not cliquey in that respect. It's more that they're this eclectic group of people who have kind of come together. It feels in some ways that they've come together almost accidentally on purpose, if that makes sense, that their purpose for solving crime has grown over time, and they've got more into it. Do you use mums at the school gate as inspiration for your characters, or dare you not say in case they know?
It's funny because I had the local paper run a story about the books, and one of the questions that the woman asked me was, "Are they based on real people?" And I thought, God, if people read this,
I'm not telling you,
I'm gonna get so much trouble. But no, it's more that the kind of parts of them obviously come over, and I guess like the struggles. So like I'm a stay-at-home mom, I don't work, but like I've got a friend who's a single mom who also works full time, so her experiences are in the book. So yeah, and like some people have really feckless husbands. Thankfully mine's not, but you know, the feckless husbands definitely make it into the book. So yeah, it's you steal little bits of people, don't you? But hopefully not a whole person, because then you could get in real trouble.
Yeah, then school drop off and pick up could become a little bit awkward, couldn't it?
Yeah, and actually some of the school mums have read the books, so that was a slightly nerve-wracking moment. But they've not, if they're offended, they've not said anything. So hopefully I'm okay.
Maybe they're mildly worried about your criminal thinking mind. Like, I'll not tell her in case I end up as a victim in the next one. But I think you're right. I think that you do pick up on little characteristics, and you do kind of think, oh, I'll use that in a book. You see things, people's quirks, and I've definitely done that. I've given people like people's quirks. So Alana, Rowan's daughter in my books, she is named after somebody who I actually know in real life. When I was starting to get to the point where I was going to self-publish, I kind of had a bit of trepidation, and I didn't at that time have a huge amount of author community around me. And she was somebody I worked with, and we spoke about things we want to achieve with our lives. And as through that chat, I talked to her about my books. And so I kind of said, oh, can I name a character after you? And she was like, oh yeah, that'd be amazing. But because she is quite a bit younger than me, there are definitely characteristics of Alana that are the true characteristics of the person I know. And she knows that, that's fine. But they're that kind of way that she's like super organized, and she's really quite sensible for somebody of her age. Like that's a true reflection of the person I know. So sometimes that's quite easy to write. Obviously I was really upfront about the fact that I used some of the characteristics. And then one of my pathologist, Sonia, that's named after a really supportive friend, but she doesn't have a lot of the same characteristics. That was more of just like a tip of the hat to like being really supportive. So I think that's been quite fun for me to have that as a in the back of my mind when I develop the characters. But then you've got other people who sort of secondary characters who definitely I took bits and pieces from people I know, and sometimes I kind of thought, I wonder if they will recognize that. And nobody else has ever said to me, oh, well, did you take that from me? Which I think probably it means that I've added it in enough layers to make that character their own person without it being just a carbon copy of the person I know. But I definitely think writing makes you a people watcher. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And not just in real life either. You know, I find that like I watch a lot of TV, probably too much, but you know, and reading other books and things, if you find a character and you think, oh, that's a great character trait, you know, you don't take the whole character, obviously,
No.
but if there's like certain little twists about them that you like, or you know, what if that character was male when they're female or something like that? Yeah, I definitely think you kind of steal a lot from what's going on around you.
Absolutely. I watch, I was gonna say I watch a lot of reality TV. I don't. But I do watch reality TV. And it's funny because sometimes I'll say to my husband, but this is just pure research. Like this is for the book.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to watch this for that. And it's and you do pick up on people's mannerisms or little ways they have of saying things. And I think that that's actually quite nice to do. Round out your characters. Do you have is your main character your favorite character, or do you have in the supporting cast somebody you think, oh, I just love writing them?
Well, I have one character called Bernie, who's the kind of difficult one. So she's the one who says exactly what she thinks all the time. And somebody like that is not easy to be around. And it's maybe not the nicest person you're ever going to meet, but she's so much fun to write because she'll say like the cheekiest, kind of rudest things to anyone she meets. So that's brilliant because that's that kind of outlet of like things you would never say, but you can have that character say them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually love reading Bernie because I think she says the things that people wish they could say and then don't say. So I think, and she gets away with it as well, because people just gonna go, oh, well, it's just her. And she kind of does things just because she thinks, right, well, I'm going to do that. And And so I really enjoyed reading Bernie because of that, because I thought that
she's very
forthrightness I
good.
really liked.
And she's great for kind of moving the story along, like you're
Mm,
saying, about she does things that other people wouldn't do.
yeah,
So when you're writing kind of amateur sleuths, although they're not really amateurs, they're private
yeah,
investigators, but you know, that thing of like, you need to get them into somebody's house. Well, your average person isn't going to break into somebody's house, but
no.
Bernie might do it. Bernie might just break into somebody's house.
I think she would. I think she would be like, it's all right, we can just put a brick through this window here at the back. Nobody will know. We'll take the brick with us when we go. There'll be no fingerprints. I think she is that kind of character who would be like, well, it's for a good cause, so we really should put a brick through the window.
Yeah, she sort of trusts her own morality. So like she always
Yeah,
is right. So she's happy to do whatever.
yeah.
Doesn't always work with everyone else, but
No, but she doesn't really care though, does she?
no, not at all. But that's my wishful thinking, because I'm one of these people that's very kind of like socially introverted and would never do any of that. So it's really fun to, I guess, write characters that are kind of different from you as well.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. To be honest, when I write Rowan sometimes, and somebody, our mutual friend Liz Hurley,
Hmm.
uh, she alpha read for me on book 5, which is going through editing just now, and this is the first time she's alpha read for me, and she was like, Rowan just doesn't care, does she? I love it. She's like, she just couldn't care less what people think. And I think there is like that kind of like outlet for me as well when I write about her, that she will say and do things that I'd like to think I would be like that ballsy, but I wouldn't be. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, and I guess her job helps with that as well, doesn't it? Like she's in a kind of position of well, sort of power. She can do what she likes almost, can't she?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I wanted not to write a police procedural when I wrote this series is I didn't want to worry about the procedural part of it. And I wanted her to be able to blur the lines of what was acceptable and what wasn't. Particularly in the first book, it was really important to me that she could be as angry as she needed to be, because she was investigating through her own grief. And I think a lot of the way she behaves is a way of dealing with grief, and a way of channeling that without really addressing her own emotions about it, which she actually rarely does. She has a few kind of moments where she has some sort of sadness and reflection, but she's not really allowing herself to that. She has, so it comes out as anger in the first book, and I needed her to be able to be that angry and be that kind of aggressive person. But as the series goes on, she does, I don't think she mellows. I think because there's not the personal connection to the story. She doesn't, there's that kind of like layer. She doesn't feel as ragey, but she still doesn't care. She still doesn't care what.
Yeah, she's still got a little bit of rage.
She doesn't like authority, and she doesn't
Yeah,
like being told what she can't do. So she's still raging against authority, and I think that probably comes from the fact that I feel like I've been raging against authority all my life. I don't like being told what to do. Um, so in book 1, it's Mary, isn't it, your main character? Is that right? Yes. Um,
yeah.
she is starting a whole new life that she doesn't really anticipate becoming part of this cooperative. It's a bit of a baptism of fire for her, isn't it? And she's also hiding some secrets of her own, not to give any spoilers away, but she's sitting on a few of her own secrets there. And she kind of ends up in the cooperative by accident, I think. And not everybody is necessarily really happy about her presence, because I think she's seen as more of the goody two shoes of the gang, even though she definitely has her moments. Did you deliberately write such a diverse between Bernie and Mary? Was it intentional that you wanted there to be such a big character difference, or did that just evolve naturally?
I think it probably came naturally out of my characters. I don't plot, so most things kind of happen naturally. But yeah, Mary is kind of like me on steroids. So Mary is the more kind of introverted. She's got one more child than I do. But I also feel quite often overwhelmed and outnumbered by the kids. But her, I guess it's kind of like a redemption story for her. So she goes from, as you say, she kind of got a bit of a troubled kind of past life and stuff, and then she's gonna join this detective agency and find a whole new meaning to her life beyond just being a mum. So I guess
Yeah.
that was the kind of the idea really behind her. And yes, the fact that she clashes with Bernie and a bit of a clash with Liz as well. And that relationship kind of goes on through the book. So the book that I'm kind of writing now, sort of a slight spoiler, but I'm going to put Liz on maternity leave. So she's not going to be in this book. She's going to get a book off. So I like kind of playing about with the form a little bit like that. So now it's going to be, the question is Bernie going to allow Mary to step up and take that position on? So yeah, I like that kind of little bit of conflict. Obviously they're on the same side, but to make it interesting, you want a little bit of conflict as well.
Definitely, you need that kind of like tension situation so that they are, like you say, on the same side, but with very different ideas about how to deal with that, and how to what's the right way forward. I think is the kind of thing. For book one though, it was almost like Mary was rediscovering herself, I think, remembering who she maybe was beyond being somebody's mum and that kind of thing. And I liked that part of the story. I liked starting off there and seeing her really grow in confidence in her own self-belief and just becoming less passive and more taking more action and more taking the lead. So that was a really nice way to go. Have you continued that throughout the series, where she's continued to become a bit more vocal and a bit more of her own, find her own space?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that came from where I was when I was writing the book. I took 2 years off writing when COVID hit. I was trying to write and feeling guilty about not writing when I was homeschooling the kids, and then when I was, writing, I was feeling guilty about not being with the kids. So when the lockdowns hit, I just decided no writing. I can take 2 years out. So I literally didn't write a word for 2 years, and coming back to these books was that kind of like rediscovery of, oh, I can still write, and I am not just somebody's mom. I can also write books. So yeah, I think that definitely a lot of that came out of my own experience as well.
So have you always self-published all of your series, all of your different genres? Has it always been self-publishing for you?
Yeah, it has. I've not even really looked that hard about at Sadpub. My first few books were very strange, and I sort of knew that a publisher wouldn't pick them up. Like they've done okay, they've done fine, but they have a very niche readership because they're based on the real life person of Charles Fort, who was the guy who first started writing about paranormal things. But they're not written as paranormals, they're written as straight mysteries, and he's just a character in them. So they were really weird. They don't really hit any particular market, and I sort of knew that a traditional publisher wouldn't be interested. So I started publishing them, and then I did a few kind of science fiction ones for a while, just kind of ticking along. And then when I went back to writing after the lockdowns, I thought, let's see if I can actually make a go of this. My youngest child starts school next week. So the option was either make a bit of money from writing or go and get a job. So that was the kind of the reason behind it. Is I really didn't want to have to go get a job. I really like the fact that I can sit in my pajamas and write books. So that was what kind of pushed me into it. So then, yeah, I started trying to write quickly, trying to put the words in, and write something that was a little bit more to market. Whereas everything else I'd written had been definitely more exactly what I wanted to write, and then think about marketing after, which is not probably the best way of going about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you, like you said, you wanted that to be your sort of full-time job, you kind of you do have to think about the market a little bit more than otherwise. So you said you never really thought about trad publishing. What is it you like about self-publishing?
I think the thing I like most is the speed. So I'm a fast writer. I can write a book. I can, run it through a quick proofread, and then I can have it up like in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
it just, the speed makes a huge difference for me. The kind of having to get past all the gatekeepers, you know, the having to get an agent, and then, you know, waiting again for an agent to submit, waiting again for publishers, it's just not really me. It might be, I do have a thriller that I've written that I'm considering looking at traditional publishing, but in that case, I think I'll probably submit to people like Bookouture that are that kind of almost like a hybrid between self-publishing and
Yeah.
traditional. And they're a bit quicker as well. So yeah, I think the speed's the main thing, and obviously having the kind of control to do what you like with it as well.
Yeah, I think for me the control part is huge, because when I decided to self-publish, I had thought I had a couple of attempts with other books to try to publish, and I'd had some manuscript reads and I'd had some fabulous feedback. So when I started writing the Rowan series, I really wanted it to be a series, and I didn't want to be stopped, if that made sense. I didn't want someone to say, oh no, go away and write something else. I wanted to write this series. And so as I was writing book one, I knew then that would be my start with self-publishing. But the control is huge for me. Whilst I'm on the other end of the scale, I can write quite quickly, but the process for me from like sort of like starting a book to getting it ready to go is much longer than for yourself. And my real life, not that my writing life isn't real, but my real life the last sort of 3 or 4 years has been really hectic with other things. And so I like that I don't have other people imposing deadlines on me. I like that I can be like, you know what, like last year I had a couple of huge life events. So my dad passed suddenly in March, and then in July I had a scheduled hip replacement. So there was a couple of really huge things happened to me, and I was intending to put a book out in April, but because of my dad passing, that just didn't happen. And then coming up with my operation, I was like, I just don't have this in me. The kind of two merged together, and so it didn't happen until the end of the year. And I was like, actually, it's fine because I'm in control of this situation. And I think if I'd had, on top of that, I had to go back to an editor or to a publisher or an agent and be like, I need more time, I would have really felt the stress from that. And it would have maybe taken away some of the pleasure of the part of that writing and publishing part. So I think most self-published authors I've spoken to, they always say control is a huge part of why they enjoy it. So I would completely agree with that. And it's not just, I think, not just like the publishing scheduling. It's like you get to control your covers and you get to control your book titles, and you know, no one's saying to you, I really think you should rename that character, or I don't quite like this part. You know, I mean, you do obviously get your beta readers and all that sort of thing, but you haven't got somebody imposing what they think on you in the same way. So yeah, I love that part of it. Although, like you, I have a couple of ideas for standalones. I don't know if your thriller is going to be a standalone, but that I probably would put to a couple of agents that I would really like to work with who have read thrillers for me before, that I would kind of see where that goes. So that's on my 2024 list of things to do. What's on your upcoming list of things to do? What's next in terms of for this series or for anything else you'd like to write?
Yeah, well, I have this thriller, and it's kind of like 80% done, and it's, you know, sometimes that last 20% is the hardest bit. So I need to go and finish it, and then I will probably submit it to a couple of publishers. But the good thing is I do have the backup option, which is perfectly capable now of publishing it myself. So I'll maybe look at that.
Yeah.
I obviously have book 6 to write, which comes out at the end of October. And I've got a few ideas for that. I'm gonna, when the kids go back to school, start writing that. But I would like to slow the pace on these books. So my whole kind of idea was to build up this momentum to kind of make money, I guess. That was the kind of main idea. And that's happened, and that's been great. But I can't publish a book every couple of months for the rest of my life. You know, I'm gonna have a breakdown if I do that. So what I would like to do going forward is publish one of these every 6 months, and then do like other things in between, you know. So I still like my science fiction fantasies, although I don't really sell any of them. I'd like to maybe write another one of them at some point. So yeah, I'd like to kind of open up the schedule a little bit, give myself a bit more freedom. not be quite as stressed. My husband says always like the week before a book launch is a stressful time. I think it's like having a baby though. I kind of forget every time how bad it is. So I'm like, oh, it's fine. And then yeah, it's pretty bad.
So my books 1 and 2, like I was really so stressed on the run up to them. And I made this huge mistake with book 2, is that for some reason, best known to myself, I thought I'll release this on my birthday. That will be fun. And it was like such a stupid idea, because the whole day I was just involved in like social medias and marketing. And I was like, I just actually want to relax. It's my birthday. So that was like a bit of a thing. That was really the most challenging one. And then last year I had a book ready to go, but I hadn't done it. And it was getting towards the end of the year. And I was like, I just don't want this year to pass without me having published. So I published that, and then Bloody Snow, which is a winter novella, within, like, I think I published one in November and one in early December, because they were both ready to go. And I was like, that's fine. So I did get 2 books out last year, but both really at the end. And so that was, I don't want to say it was a non-event, because obviously I was excited, but it came off the back of a really challenging year. So I just wanted to feel like I still had some of my own achievements. So this time for this book, for Lies She Didn't Tell, I am really excited, and I feel like, yeah, I feel like it feels more like the first sort of time again, because that kind of little sort of special way. And this week has been really hectic, and that's why I wanted to do these chats and have something a bit special to put up on my social media, to talk about books and to talk about my books, but also other people's, because I think it's really nice to have that chat where you talk about other crime writers and that sort of thing. So yeah, so this time feels a bit more special for sure. And I think I had forgotten what that feels like.
You kind of do, like, you don't really celebrate launches as much after the first one, do you? You're kind of like, oh, it's another book. But actually, you put just as much effort in, sometimes even more effort if it's been a particularly difficult one. So yeah, it's good to really celebrate that achievement, and continuing a series for 3, 4, 5 books, whatever. Like, that's something that should be celebrated, I think.
Yeah, definitely, because I think I love writing in a series, because like you say, you get to know those characters, and so you're in that world. It's great, but you are also, have the part where you're thinking it's still really important that these characters develop and have fresh things happen, and their lives continue, and it's not just Groundhog Day for them personally, but with a new mystery. So I'm conscious of the fact that I want them to get to the end and still have had that part where they've grown. And that's the thing that I think is more challenging about series. But you're right, you do celebrate more the first one than you do after that. And I often see on Twitter and other social media where people who are traditionally published, their publishers will send them this like lovely gift basket of things, and you think, oh, you know what? And I think last year, the year I said, oh, I should totally do that. I should have a little cardboard box, and I should put things in it to be like, this will be my gift to myself. And I never do. And I always am like, oh yeah, I should totally do that. So maybe one day I'll send myself, and not literally, but like I'll have a little small hamper of things that are just, face mask, bubble bath, that kind of thing, just to like publishing days, like detox stuff.
I know, it's a lovely idea. Remember when Kate Baker, when she had her book, she did like an unboxing and stuff. I was like,
Yeah.
I should do an unboxing. Why don't I do them? And then it's because I'm always like doing the paperback formatting at the last possible minute. That's why I don't do an unboxing, because I'm still like, oh my goodness, the formatting's not finished and it's got to go live in 2 days or something. So maybe with the next book I'll do that.
It's always maybe the next one. I do my paperback formatting quite early on, because I like to have a physical copy to go through and to check, and also just to do that last part after I've had all the edits back and things, like, be like, right, okay, I just need to go through it in that different medium. So yeah, my paperback kicks around for a bit before I format my Kindle copy. So do you publish wide, or are you KU, Kindle Unlimited?
So with these books, with The Crown, the T.E. Scott name, I'm just an Amazon. And I keep thinking, maybe I will go wide. At the moment, I'm making more money from paid seeds than from sales. So I don't know at the moment. My science fiction fantasy books are wide, and I have done all right with them in the past. I've had a few book bumps on them and stuff, but again, I've sort of haven't published anything for sort of 3 years with those names, sort of kind of quietly died off. But yeah, in the future, I might well go wide, but KU money's quite good at the moment. I can't quite give it up yet. We'll see. I know the KU rate has dropped a little bit recently, so maybe there'll be a kind of crunch point where I'll stop. But if you look at, I'm sure you're the same, like if you look at the charts, most of these crime books, particularly the ones in series, they're mostly in KU. And I always think if that's what everyone else in your genre is doing,
Yeah.
it's generally best to do the same, I think.
Yeah, I'm like you. I make a lot more from KU reads than I do from physical sales. So I'm happy being Amazon only. And I think that when I thought about it, I always thought I mean, obviously everybody would like to be like LJ Ross because she's just the queen of like self-published crime, isn't she? But like I thought that's the route that she took, and she's been very successful doing it. I would love to be as successful as her. I'm not anywhere near, sadly, but I thought, you know, if she's kind of made it work, then it's certainly worth trying. And that was my initial point. So yeah, my KU reads make up a good portion of my income, and so I think I would be really reluctant to risk that to go wide.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pain going wide. Like the admin side just takes a lot longer. So if I say I spot a typo in one of my books that's wide, I've got to obviously change it on Amazon. I've then got to change it. I use Draft to Digital for quite a few, but I'm also direct with Google Play, Kobo, somewhere else as well. I don't even know. But so there is quite a lot of work involved. But yeah, I might in the future. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. And yeah, I don't, there is, I think you're probably saying there's always that slight feeling of, oh, I'm just slightly beholden to Amazon. You know, they could decide tomorrow they don't want to publish any self-published authors. You know, they could just shut it down overnight. So there is that slight kind of worry, but at the moment, yeah, financially, it just makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, I always think they probably won't, because it must make them a decent chunk of cash, purely personally. And they do have big names like LJ Ross and JD Kirk, and those people, you know, are big advocates for Amazon as well. So I think that there's that part where you have these big best-selling authors, you know, million copy selling authors who are saying, hey, use this platform, it's great. And so the risk of them selling that down is like, that is a huge chunk of their business would be gone. So I hope they don't. But you know, you are right, you are beholden to Amazon in that respect. I think I'm plowing forward with the belief it will be fine. And there is part of me as well that, because I do work full time as well, that I actually don't think I have the time or energy to go wide. So I'll just trickle along, see how it goes, and see what happens next.
Yeah, I think ideally, if you're at the point of having like a virtual assistant or something, that would be quite handy for the wide stuff, because none of it's actually hard, it's just kind of tedious.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does take up quite a bit of time.
Yeah, it's the admin part of self-publishing that I like the least. So all of the formatting and the, you know, all the, dare I say, all the marketing, that's not my natural wheelhouse. So that's the bit that I find the most challenging, time-wise as well, because I think for me, my time for writing related things is finite. And so if I spend an hour doing admin stuff, that's an hour I haven't written. So it's always a balance of like trying to find time to do both. Yeah, but we'll see.
Yeah, it is time consuming. I mean, I'm doing a bit of ads at the moment, and I've kind of dipped in and out of ads, like Facebook ads and Amazon ads. I tend to be quite good at getting them to break even, but not so good at getting them to actually make any money. So yeah, but again, it's just time. And like I spent like 3 hours today on Facebook ads, and as you say, that could have been a 3-hour writing session.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to weigh it up. And if it's actually taking, because what really earns you the money is the writing. So if it's taking money away from the writing, you're probably better doing that instead.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like a balance. It's always everything is a balancing act. But I think that's the part when you self-publish. If you are a reader, you maybe don't realize how much extra work the writer is doing to get all of those things, to get your book, that book in front of the reader. They're doing all that extra work that is generally in a trad situation taken on by somebody else who's for who that is a full-time job. So I mean, some readers will absolutely know that, and others will be completely oblivious to the fact that, you know, you're up till like midnight trying to set up a Facebook ad and things like that. So in my book 5, I've taken Rowan away from her hometown to mix it up a little bit, and to try and, I don't really, do you know, it was not really a deliberate sort of plan to do, but I was on holiday in the north of Scotland, and I went through a place, and I was like, I kind of had the inklings of an idea, and I thought, oh, Rowan should totally come here, and we could have that situation, and kind of gave me a fresh way of her dealing with new people. Do you think you'll ever take the wrong women out of their current setting and off to other pastures new for an adventure or for a mystery?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the north. Like, I'm from up near Inverness, but I did was it the 3rd book or the 4th book? I lose count. But I did send them to Aviemore for Hendu, which obviously goes quite badly because the bride-to-be is murdered, which is not what you want in a Hendu.
No, it's not ideal.
But that was sort of born out of the fact that I have found, I don't know if you found this, but Hindus are some of the most socially awkward kind of situations you've ever been in, because you have that thing of like, you can be friends with the bride, but you're all from different circumstances. Nobody really knows each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was again to kind of get them out of their comfort zone a little bit. And I always love those Agatha Christie kind of country house settings as well, where there's a limited pool of kind of suspects and things.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
I
think if you're writing a series, you need to mix it up a bit, don't you?
You definitely do. I would like to be able to, in a series, maybe not this series, but different, like take my characters abroad, and have that sort of like completely different situation. I've kind of had that thought in my head for a while, but I just don't know how I could work it in, and obviously have a trip that I can claim as an expense, as a legitimate business.
Totally.
I'm sorry, I had to go to Portaventura because I had to research. Nothing that could be done about it. But yeah, no, I would quite like to go overseas. Maybe I actually, early on in my writing sort of crime books, I had an idea for writing a character that was part of Interpol. And I thought that would be a great way to have.
That's interesting. I've not really read many things with Interpol, so that might be an interesting one to do.
And it's still kind of shelved there in the background, but Interpol is quite a complex organization.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was quite early in my crime writing sort of stage, and I was just like, I just don't feel confident enough. So maybe one day I'll go back there. Did you always want to be a writer? Is there something that's been there your whole life?
Oh yeah, definitely. I went to uni and did English literature, and I didn't really leave because I went and did a PhD. So I was at uni for 10 years, doing that. So I'm officially a doctor of English literature. And yeah, that was basically because I loved reading, and it was a kind of legitimate way to read, and get a student loan for it. But yeah, I've always probably in the background wanted to write. But I think I was maybe one of the things that, funnily enough, that happened during that English literature degree was I got a bit scared off, because you study English literature and you think, oh well, I can never write as good as Joyce, or I can never write a play like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And of course, you don't have to, but you get that fear, don't you? And even now, like, I'll go and read a Val McDermott book and I'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to write as well as she is. But, she does something totally different from me. So that's okay. But yeah, it definitely took me a little while to get the confidence to write. But once I did, I was okay. But it did take me I finished my PhD in 2011 and wrote my first book in kind of 2015, 2016. But yeah, it did take a little while.
I always wanted to write. Ever since I was a little girl, there's been nothing else I really wanted. I wrote some terrible, god awful poetry in my teens, because what is the life of a writer if they don't write really horrific poetry in their teenage years? Which I think is lost to the world, which is no tragedy.
Thank goodness, I know. Thank goodness there wasn't like Facebook back then and you were putting it online.
My God. I am so grateful for the fact that there was no social media when I grew up, because it saved me a lifetime of embarrassment and God knows what else. But yeah, so there was some awful poetry in my past, some really bad cliched fantasy sort of sci-fi novels. All I remember is there was a lot of things where you go through worlds in a mirror. That was really all I remember of that. And I do actually have those notebooks in my storage, where they will stay.
Yeah.
And where I might actually one day destroy them so that they can't be used against me in the future. But originally, after that, I wanted to be a children's author, because I am actually a qualified nursery nurse, although I haven't done that for a really long time. And so I started to write children's books, and I did get a publishing deal, and I was thrilled. And just as I was starting to get sort of go through the contract process, the editor that had said yes left and went to another house, and the person replaced it didn't want my book, and so it all fell apart, which was mildly devastating, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think that thing of like trad publishing, you're so built up to be like, the moment of signing your contract is like the most amazing thing. So then when it falls through, it must have been just so upsetting.
Yeah, and I think not that it put me off writing, but it kind of really jarred my confidence for a really long time. And then I found myself in this kind of wilderness of like, I didn't actually know what I wanted to write anymore. And I dabbled in so many different things, and we'd get sort of 20, 30,000 words into a book and be like, nope, that one's not for me. And it really, and this is like, I'm so stupid, because I watched so much crime drama, read almost exclusively in crime, so it just hadn't occurred to me. And then one day my husband said, well, why don't you write crime books, because you like them so much? And I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. And I sort of had a little dabble, and I had this idea, and I went to like a masterclass thing, and I kind of pitched my idea, and it kind of got crickets from the agents that were there, and I was like, oh right, okay, I'm not on the right track. And that set me back a little while, until I actually, in book one, in my acknowledgements, I credit Birmingham Airport as being part of the reason that book was written. And the reason for that is because I was on a work trip, and my flight home was delayed by 4 hours, and I was just like, God, that you're on a work trip and you're like, why do I do this job? Like, what am I thinking? Like, I could be at home right now. And I thought, I'll go buy a book, because I need to find something to do to kill the next 4 hours. And I walked into the Waterstones or Beach Smith, whatever it is, in the airport in Birmingham, and Girl on the Train was the big book. So I picked it up, and I read the back of this book, and I spent a lot of time on the train as a teenager going to and fro school. And I was like, knew in my heart of hearts that I had a thought about somebody seeing a murder out of train. Not that I'm saying I could have written Girl on a Train, but that kind of idea. And I was really mad with myself that I had just sat around talking about wanting to be a writer, and actually not doing no writing. I was so cross with myself for being so passive in my own ambition, that I didn't buy the book. I have read it, I enjoyed it. So I bought myself a notebook and a pen instead, and I started to write what eventually became Jack in a Box. So that was around 2015 as well. And that was when I started to kind of, that you get a point where you take yourself seriously, and you think, this is something that actually I want to do, and I'm going to dedicate time to doing. That was my kind of that moment. So yeah. So Girl on the Train was that kind of point where I was like, what have I been doing with my life?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Like, so much of it's about self-confidence, and So I worked out that I've published 18 books.
Amazing.
But it's only really in the last year that when I meet somebody new, I'll say, well, I still say I'm a stay-at-home mum, but I'll also say, and I also write. So, but like before then, I would never have described myself as a writer,
Uh,
particularly because it's that kind of anonymous way on Amazon as well. You can be slightly stood apart from it.
yeah,
So it's funny that, I mean, I guess it's kind of imposter syndrome, isn't it? But that just having that confidence of like, no, I can actually do
yeah,
this. It's such a big thing.
definitely. And I think that that's part of the, you know, the part of the thing about self-publishing and trad publishing is that when you self-publish, you need to have a bit of confidence about yourself and about what you've written. Because when you trad publish, you can have some confidence and even you'd be really confident, but you are still waiting for somebody else to say, yeah, yeah, okay, come on in. Like you get around to you're through to the next round sort of situation. So I don't think I would have been in the right mental place to self-publish before then, before I started writing the Rowan books, because I think I was still waiting for somebody to tell me I was good enough. And in a weird way, having full reads from agents and them saying, not this time, but I like this and this, made me think, you know what, actually, maybe I don't need you. Maybe I can do this myself. So
Yeah, just enough kind of positive feedback to just give you
yeah,
that little glint of maybe, you know, I'm not going to embarrass myself. You know, these are
yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. So when people who know you, like your friends and family, read your books, do you get that kind of cringe moment where you're like, God, you're going to read thoughts that came out of my head? Are you quite confident about that now?
I think I've kind of got over it a little bit now. My husband is like my kind of first like alpha reader. As he always says, he's like, "You're funny in your bits." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm
What
not
does that mean?
real life. But yeah, so he alpha reads these ones for me, any kind of typo spots for me as well. So but I am always kind of waiting for him to read them, and sometimes I put like little jokes. I'm like, "Oh, Chris will like that."
And you just
So,
wait for him to laugh and be like, you didn't laugh. That's just not okay.
yeah, and of course he hates when he reads a bit because I'm like over his shoulder, like
Yeah.
which bit have you read? How
What
much?
bit? Yeah.
Yeah, totally hates that. And yeah, my mum reads them all as well. Obviously, mums are great. Mums read them. But she's a bit more critical. She's a typical Scottish mum. I remember when I published my like first ever mystery novel, she put a review up on Amazon, which obviously you're not even meant to do if you're the writer's mum. She gave it 4 stars. It's like, she didn't even do 5 stars. But that's a typical Scottish mum, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
that's harsh.
So yeah, but
Not
no,
even a loyalty star.
I know, but yeah, I guess if I was maybe writing something a bit more controversial, maybe I'd be more worried.
Yeah.
But my stuff's generally quite lighthearted, so there's not too much I think that people could object to. Although I did get my first bad review in America, 2 stars, and said they had to stop reading because of the profanities. So, and to be fair, there's not really that many, so they must be quite I don't know, somebody that's kind of offended quite easily. But I was like, well, if that's a bad review, I'll take that. That's not bad at
Yeah.
all.
I mean, you're never gonna be for everybody, are you? Like that's the thing. I think that there's books I don't like that other people like, you know, and so I feel like you're never gonna be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. Um, but yeah, the profanity, the swearing, that's an interesting bit, isn't it? Because how much is enough, but not too much? Because actually, people in the way they speak, particularly probably where you stay as well, like it's not it's a fairly common part of spoken language, and not in a necessarily in a like an angry way. It can be just part of the way somebody talks. So
Yeah,
that
mine's definitely toned down compared to what it would actually be like.
oh yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you wrote exactly how people would speak, then I think you would probably I think it'd be quite hard to read because of that, but also you would probably offend most people. They'd be like, all right, love, just chill it with the F word, eh? But yeah, I think, and there's words that I wouldn't use that people use quite freely in speech. They could be sat on the train and people be like having that chat and you're like, okay, cool. But I don't think translates to a written situation.
Yeah, it sounds much harsher written down, doesn't it? So
It
yeah, I
does.
think we probably
Yeah,
tend to have a bit of a lighter touch in the books.
yeah, definitely. I use the read aloud function when I'm at the end sort of stages, and sometimes even I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe we could drop a couple of those in that interaction because that was a bit much. But I think the swearing in my books has actually started to tail off. There was definitely more in book 1 than there is in book 5, which I'm going through the editing process of just now. So yeah, there was definitely more then, and I don't really know why. Maybe I've just mellowed in that process, or when I originally wrote Jack in the Box, I actually went through in the edits, and some of the feedback I got was there's just actually way too much swearing. Like, you need to take this back. So I did. But yeah, I think there's always going to be a portion of people who are upset by that. And for me, I find that does tend to be stateside rather than in the UK.
Yeah, they're definitely more sensitive. But I mean, J.D. Kirk, his books are full of swearing. So
Yeah, and
like,
incredibly popular.
yeah, so I think it does depend. I was worried because you know, from the BXP group that I had this big book club, and I gave away a huge amount of the book in America, and I just wasn't too sure how they were going to take it
Yeah,
because my worry was that a lot of the Scottish kind that they might see, particularly cozies, is very kind of like Hamish Macbeth, quite kind of
yeah,
teen.
yeah,
And my book isn't like that really at all. But actually, apart from, as I said, that one review about swearing, they've been really positive, the
that's
reaction to it.
brilliant.
So yeah, it just goes to show. I mean, hopefully, I guess if they've read the blurb and stuff, they'll kind of know.
Yeah,
If they're looking for something super kind of cutesy, it's not going to be for them.
yeah. Do you find, so I've discovered this through my kind of network of alpha and beta readers, that some things just don't translate over like to stateside. So one of the things that I had in Bloody Snow, which like says my novella, is it's all based around a pantomime, and I had no idea that medium of theatre didn't translate into other places. So so now I put like a little caveat at the front of my book. So I always put, this is written by a British author and set in Scotland, so all the spelling is British spelling, because internationally I know there'll be some people going, that's not how you spell flavour or colour or whatever. So I like to have it so it's right up there in front. And now I just have other little caveats as well that say things like, this is what pantomime is, or in book 4 I've put, this is what Bovril is, because somebody said to me, I don't know what Bovril is. And I was like, oh man. And I think I've described it as meaty Marmite or something like that. But it's one of those things that there are little things that you think, oh, I don't think about the fact that doesn't translate. And sometimes I don't bother because I feel like people overseas know they're reading a book set in Scotland. So they'll be like, oh, I don't know what a steak bridie is, but I can look that up, or I can figure it out from the context. I've never heard of Stevens Bakers. So that kind of thing. I feel like those things are fine. But do you find there are sometimes things that don't translate that you have to think about differently?
Yeah, I haven't really done much of that. It might be that it's about to bite me in the bum when these 25,000 Americans go and read the books. I don't know. I did have one of my kind of beta readers feedback on the last book because I've got somebody chapping a door, which is, I think, maybe, do you say chap in
Yeah.
Sterling for knocking on a door? And she was
Yes.
just like, what the hell is chapping on a door?
Yeah. You played Chapdoor Run when you were a kid. I mean, obviously I didn't, because I was really well behaved. I would never knock on someone's door and run away. That would be terrible. But yeah, absolutely. And there are, I think, different things. What did I have in book 5? I said somebody burst a tire, and I meant that it basically had like a puncture. It wasn't like a big explosion. They were like, but it felt like really anticlimactic from your language. And I was like, okay, because we would say someone burst a tire, it would just mean
That's
tire.
quite a common phrase, yeah.
Yeah, but not, and that was in the UK. So sometimes I think about it, and sometimes I'm like, it'll be fine. And I'm not.
Yeah, I hope it'll be fine. Hopefully, I guess if it was something major, maybe a better reader would catch it. I'm trying to think where all my better readers are from, but yeah, generally, I just kind of let the Scottish words do their thing and
Yeah,
hope they do make sense.
that'll be fine.
It's Paisley words as well, so that might be another level, but
Yeah, so there are definitely things like there. I think the international understanding is that all Scottish words are the same, but there are definitely words we use in Fife that you don't use other places. So I worked for a long time in Sterling, and there were words they used there that I was like, I don't know what that means. Or I would say something and they would look at me blankly, and you're like, okay, fair enough. So even that kind of just like a few miles down the road is a bit different. So in Paisley, do you get your messages when you do your grocery shopping?
well, we do, but we don't in the Highlands. We wouldn't have said that up north. I think messages comes from Ireland. The Irish people say it, and there's not as many Irish people up north.
Yes.
But yeah, it's funny. I was speaking to Cara Ramsey, who's a Scottish crime
Yeah.
writer. I did a kind of, she was doing like a writer session thing. It's quite fun at the Paisley Book Festival, and she was saying that her publisher basically makes her take them all out, all the Scottish words, because I guess they don't want it to be that kind of regional. So, but yeah, I kind of rely on the context that people can work them out. But I think if it's done well, it adds that little bit of flavor to it as well, you know, because people are quite interested, I think, in the different things.
Yeah, I think so. Like in book 4, Lies Shouldn't Tell, it's coming out on Friday. There's like a couple of characters who are quite broadly Fife, and I have peppered their speech with Fifeisms enough that it creates an accent and that kind of thing, but not so much that people wouldn't be like, I don't know what that means. So, you know, you've got some oots instead of out and things like that, te and fe and stuff that's easy to understand, because in the context of a sentence, that has to be the word.
Yeah,
But
we should do like a recording of the Fife accent, because when I came from the Highlands and met a load of people from Fife at university, I can understand anything they said. People
also,
always talk about the Glasgow accent, but I think Fife is stronger, isn't it?
oh yeah, for sure. And it depends on whereabouts in Fife you're from as well, because Fife has got a lot of mining towns in it. There's some even within that, there's some different things that people say. But yeah, so you know, you've got everything from St Andrews to sort of Cowdenbeath, and that's a very different accent depending on where you are. It's quite quite broad. But yeah, no, I quite like it. I think that when I read other places, books from other places, if they've got a little bit, then it's fine. If it's so overwhelming that I have no idea what's going on, then I kind of probably check out. So I kind of try and just add a bit. But I think I'd be a bit upset if someone told me to take it out. And that's another benefit of being self-published, because nobody's going to do that to me.
Exactly. Nobody can tell you what to do for good or bad.
Yeah, well, no one's ever said to me, I didn't understand a word that person was saying, or like, what does, you know, even when I've beta read, no one's ever said to me, oh, that bit was too complex to understand, you need to kind of tone it down. So I think that kind of gives me the confidence that it's understandable.
Yeah.
So you've got 1920s murder mysteries as well. Do you want to write more of those?
Yeah, I think I probably will. So I wrote the sort of 3 Charles Sport ones, the very weird ones, and then I had a spin-off of them, with a kind of American woman in London who opens a clothes shop in the 1920s. And they're much more conventional 1920s mysteries. So I'd like to do a third of them. I always like to do 3 books in any series, because it just feels like you've got 3 books, and you can do a box set. I quite like doing box sets as well. I've had quite a lot of book club deals on box sets.
Right.
And I find that book club is much more likely to accept the box set, because they see it as giving the reader better value. So yeah, I definitely like to write a third one, but as I said, there's a lot of research involved. And when I wrote the second one in that series, the Criminal Cruise, she goes on a cruise of like kind of Northern Europe. And I thought,
Mm.
oh, it'd be fine, you know, most of those places were neutral during World War One. They'll just, but none of them will change, they'll just be the same. And of course, they all changed completely. So, like, I'd said it in 1925, and for 1 year in 1925, Oslo was called Christiana. So I had to call it Christiana, but then of course the readers aren't going to know where that is. So yeah, there was a lot more kind of technical difficulties in writing then. So I'd try and maybe get one done next year, but it's going to be quite time consuming. So I'll have to see.
Yeah, I have kind of a notion to write a book set in the 1930s, but honestly, it's the research that puts me off. And that makes me sound like I'm really like lazy, but I think because I don't plan like you, and I like to just go, I don't want to be tied up with doing research. And I also don't want to write sort of 70,000-80,000 words and then be like, oh man, I've made so many mistakes. Because I sometimes think with historic things, people are like, well, actually, in
Yeah.
1933, you would have to have crossed the Forth on the ferry. You couldn't have taken the train and stuff like that.
Yeah, you do get people. I've definitely had more like kind of not even necessarily negative reviews, but reviews pointing out mistakes on the 1920s ones.
Because I think people who typically who read historic crime fiction have an interest in that time period as well. So that genuinely is the thing that puts me off. So I'm not sure that my book that I would like to write in the 1930s will ever see more than just like a general idea. Maybe one day when I've got more time to research it, then
I will say like the internet helps massively on that. So um, almost anything you can look up, you can find. So when I was doing the criminal cruise, you can find menus of what they served on like the Titanic and stuff. So you
wow.
can see, and all of this stuff has been digitized. And then there's like the Pathé films. British Pathé has their film collected. So there's loads of films like the 1920s that you can go and watch, and you can see what people looked like back then and stuff. So yeah, although there is a lot of research, I think the internet makes it a lot easier than maybe like 30 years ago would have been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, when you've had to rely on the library and like microfiche on old newspapers, so you can get your subscription to the newspaper archives and stuff like that. So maybe one day, never say never, but do you know, I always feel like I have more ideas than I have time. I don't know if you're the same.
Oh, completely. And like I always have that like my kind of dark half, my science fiction fantasy half, and it's always kind of knocking at the door like, when are you doing another science fiction one? And I read Legends and Lattes, you know, the Travis Baldree one. And that's been that big resurgence in kind of cozy fantasy. And I'm like, oh, I've got for cozy fantasy. But the time, not only the time of writing it, but then the time of like marketing something that's in a different genre. Yeah, we'll see. I might try and squeeze it in somewhere, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you have to kind of, I was thinking it's like when you're self-publishing, you're doing two jobs. You're doing the publisher's job and you're doing the writer's job.
Yeah.
And sometimes the publisher has to sit the writer down and say, sorry, you've got deadlines. You're not allowed to go and write this other totally random book.
Yeah.
You can write a little outline or some ideas down, but you know, you can't go and forget about the series that pays the bills, you know.
Yeah. But then I suppose for you, what will help with that is when you go to a less intense publishing schedule for the wrong women, and then you'll have maybe time to invest in your thriller and your other series as well.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. As you say, plan for next year is to kind of slow down a little bit on this series.
Yeah.
And get some other stuff done.
Whereas for me, I think the plan is to get some consistency in my publishing schedule, which is something I've never quite grasped. And I would probably like to do 2 books a year, because I think with working, that's a feasible thing to do. But so in 2024, I'd like to see me do 2 books from Rowan a year, and that will give me some scope to write some of the other things that are just sitting in the background that I'd like to work on. So yeah, so that's my kind of 2024 plan. Whether or not I ever achieve consistency remains to be seen. I make no promises on this front, because I definitely haven't managed to master that yet, and I'm probably moving house next year, so maybe that's a crazy thought, but yeah, consistency for me next year, and definitely getting some more other idea projects out there. So I would actually love to talk to you for much longer, but I just realized we've been chatting for about an hour, so we should probably wrap it up. If you're watching this and you would like to get a signed paperback copy from myself of Jack in a Box, then please like, share, and give me a wee comment. The signed paperback will be for UK people only. If you are in anywhere else in the world, I will send you a paperback copy or an ebook copy if you prefer, via Amazon, so we can sort that out in private messaging. So yeah, like, share, comment, and you'll be in the virtual hat, and I will pick those out over the weekend. Tanya, you said you might want to give away an ebook.
Yeah, I'm happy to send an ebook out again, if you don't mind doing the kind of admin side of it. But
Yeah,
anyone that
I'll
wants
put the
one can
name
get.
in the hat and give you a name for sure. Yes.
Perfect.
So if I would strongly recommend that you check out Tanya's books written under T.E. Scott for the Wrong Women's Co-operative. They're a lot of fun, great characters, and a really good read. So I thoroughly recommend you go and check those out. And obviously, please also buy my book. selfless promo at the end. Lies Shouldn't Tell is out on Friday, which is when you will be watching this. And yeah, book 4 in Rome McFarlane, and book 5 will probably come in January or February next year. Tanya, it's been such fun chatting with you, and let's do it again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Ryan. See you later.
Bye.